Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, the 28th of January. And as I told Will a few minutes ago, I'm wearing white in honor of the impending blizzard that we're going to get. I'm in Monmouth County. And this interview, there are interviews and there are interviews, and how I met Will, who's a prominent member of Gen Z. It is through Diane Uniman, a dear friend. And also we discovered our affectation with the movie Casablanca. And quite frankly, Will, I haven't met too many Gen Zers or millennials who have any clue about the movie Casablanca.
I remember when watching it, it was 2 VHSs because the movie's so long. So you had to rewind the second part just to watch half the movie.
Yep. Yeah. And it's made in 1942. It's not Star Wars.
Exactly.
And so, when I found out that, the reason why we talked about Casablanca when we did our little preliminary discussion was Will is a film student and screenwriter, director, producer, has his own production company, and I just love that. And we're not talking about somebody who's in their 40s or 50s who has all this stuff under the belt. We're talking about a solid Gen Z guy, and you can do the math. My chart tells me Gen Z. I always have to look that up. It's 22 and under. So, and I just said it to Will before he went on air. Looking at your accomplishments and what you've done in your whole career. We're talking about somebody 50 years old here. And I said, don't take it the wrong way. I'm not calling you an old man. I'm just saying, my goodness, in your short tenure, you've accomplished so much and you're so dedicated to your craft. So I'm introducing the official title. I'm going to introduce Will GIMINARO, graduate of New York Film Academy, producer, screenwriter, has a company called Evil Scarecrow Productions, and is a prominent member of Gen Z and bi-coastal guy, LA, Jersey. So I'm so excited for this because deep in my heart, I love film as much as anybody. And it drives me and makes me and teaches me and learns me. So my Johnny Carson monologue is done. And the best way to do this is to jump right in. So, Will, when and how, because you're such a young guy, when and how did you discover the world of film?
Yeah, so it was kind of around the preschool age, kind of just watching old VHS tapes, putting them in the TV, rewinding them, and kind of that was like a loop of kind of like my early childhood, watching early Walt Disney films, the Star Wars, the Indiana Jones, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the old Spielberg, type of movies on VHS. And, I didn't really, it was more of like a visual medium. It kept me interested, but I didn't realize the significance of, the art and the medium behind it until I got a little bit older and realized that's something I want to do. That is something I want to be a part of and be a part of that industry.
I think it's kind of a gift.
Oh, yeah.
It's a gift to have that passion and that curiosity and that desire at such a young age. So moving along, so you go from having that, watching VHSs and all that movie stuff. You talked about when we talked, you talked about the Art of Daydreaming and how that figures into your life? Talk about that. I
Sure.
like that.
Yeah. Growing up as a kid with, some learning disabilities and kind of like ADHD that was undiagnosed at that time, uh, education and, the classroom wasn't really the best mindset for me. And I couldn't seem to get into education. I couldn't seem to focus on it. And the things that made me happy and the things that I was interested in, were just daydreaming of movie ideas and character plots and settings.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was kind of a way to, get through the day, but also became, I guess, kind of my creative mindset now is kind of, most of my ideas come through daydreaming and, just in random walks of life.
Okay. Now, interestingly, you back then in the daydreaming days of Will Giminaro, I haven't said your full name yet. I don't remember if I did or not. But in those days, you crossed over into a whole bunch of different genres, didn't you? So you weren't in one
Certainly.
particular thing. You watched a whole bunch of different kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, like if you look at the filmography, and I hate to bring this name up, but Spielberg, he never has stayed in one genre. If it's sci-fi, period dramas, he actually did a comedy, 1941, with the
Belushi.
late Belushi.
Yeah.
Action, sci-fi, drama. There's not really anything holding him back. He's kind of the one filmmaker where he's not like the master of anything. He's not the master of horror. He's not the master of comedy. He's known for doing kind of a little bit of everything. And I guess I kind of liked that idea that I'm not held down to one genre. I'm not held down to one story
Okay.
or world, or like exploring different themes, different characters. Maybe it be real life, maybe it's fictional. But yeah, I think that's kind of where the like exploration of various genres come
Okay.
into play.
Okay. I like the quote from Spielberg. I've been a big fan
Of
of his
course.
for a long time too. I kind of marvel. When I saw Jaws, and I joke about this, and it's true. The
Hmm.
power of seeing Jaws, and it's a joke. It could be a joke for Jimmy Fallon, but after seeing Jaws back in the '70s, I've yet to walk in the ocean. No, I'm serious.
Yeah,
No, I'm serious. I have not. I go to Jersey Shore. I walk along. I let
beach
the
going.
waves.
Yeah,
Yep. I do not. I don't even go up to my knees. Nothing.
that's
It,
interesting.
it's because of
Yeah,
Jaws. I don't want to bother. And my
crazy.
sister's the same way. We laugh because we saw it together back in the day. So and this next question is kind of poignant because you're in high school. It's 2009, and you have a very inspirational teacher who kind of gets you to, well, you take it, what
Absolutely.
he did
Yeah,
for
I
you.
had a teacher, a ninth grade teacher, Eric Daniels, who currently teaches at the Trenton High School right now. Eric was a very much an instrument in getting me to write my first screenplay and kind of pushing me to take creative leadership on my own. I didn't have to wait for anybody because no one's going to come to me to make something. I have to go off and, do it on my own. And one day it was just kind of going around the classroom asking everybody what you want to do with your life. And, most freshmen in high school, the answer is Lord knows. And I was kind of the one guy, with the hand in the back who actually knew what he wanted to do. But that stumped me. That stumped me because he asked, well, what are you doing to be a writer? What are you doing to be a producer or whatnot? And I had done nothing. I had done nothing. It was all in my head. It was all through daydreaming. It was all through just, verbalizing it to others. And he really put me on the spot. And I was kind of like, wow, I really need to make I really need to get to work.
Well,
And I churned out a 135 page screenplay in 4 weeks.
wow.
Yeah. Now that screenplay nowadays is not very good, but granted, is written by a 14-year-old. But but it was just the idea that, I could put out an entire idea onto a page, and then someone can then read that and understand what was in my head internally. And yeah, that started the ground running for all of my
Wow.
kind of creative work.
No, these are all the ingredients, what we step by step. These are the ingredients of such wonderful successes as you explore the world. You have to, it's like paying dues, and you've been,
Sure.
I mean, you're paying dues and writing a screenplay in high school. My goodness.
Yeah,
My goodness.
I
Yeah.
I remember skipping the freshman, those high school dances that they used to, I remember skipping it because I had a deadline. I had to write a couple pages if I wanted to make my, due date.
So you kind of swung, you're interested in different genres, but you're a horror guy now.
Big horror fan, anything related.
So so I mean, it's funny. I was talking with my son last
Mhm.
week. I don't know, it was before and after you and I chatted, but we talked about the Wolfman with Lon Chaney,
Absolutely.
and I think the old woman, the old gypsy woman, was Maria Oskinskaya. That's totally irrelevant, and nobody on earth would know that. I don't know why that's stuck in my head just now. But we talked about, it's probably one of the great movies of all time, The Mood. And the
Sure.
mood, the emotionality, the black and white, the great tragedy of Larry Talbot.
The old kind of 1930s European architecture that, surprisingly they didn't have to build that, from scratch. It was kind of they had that, to access. And I've always found that kind of interesting, the city areas where Lon Chaney's kind of hiding behind, shadows and trying to like be aware of like the light posts around, is it really nails the mood. And this is a film from 90 years ago.
Right, right. Yeah, you mentioned also Vincent Price. He did a movie, just to
Great.
show you he did a movie, The House of Wax.
One of my favorites.
I swear to you, I mean, I saw it when I was, like a young teenager, and that movie has sat with me because everything about it scared the living hell out of me. To take this
Mhm.
beautiful girl, and the wax is coming down, and she's going to get rescued, but the wax is coming down, and uh I mean, wow, did that movie sit with me for a long, long time, even
And
now.
crazy enough, the first 3D movie ever was House of Wax, that Vincent Price
Wow.
1958, 1955, something around that area.
Wow. He was great. He was great. I mean, I quote never loved him because then he was in The Fly,
Yes.
another movie that scared the hell out of me. And another movie, we're talking about, horror, science fiction horror, The Incredible Shrinking Man. And I wrote about that too in my novel. I mean, that, that cloud, and the guy starts to shrink, and it's heavy stuff. But Psycho.
Psycho. I mean, good God, I've seen that movie dozens of times, and it doesn't get old. It doesn't. It still holds up, 62 years later. Um, it still has the same suspense in the same, this. Yeah, I mean the characters, the setting, everything just holds up so well.
Off topic. Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates. I never asked this before. We're talking about, I mean, the whole film thing. I'm so excited to talk to somebody, I can talk to somebody about this, but
Yeah.
I don't know enough, but it would be my impression. I mean, he went on to do some crazy basketball movie. He was in college, he was a basketball player, but I don't know if he ever recovered
He
from doing
didn't.
the days.
He didn't. And you know what's ironic is 20 years later, 25 years later, around 84, 85, Hitchcock had already passed away. And Universal was sitting on, they had made a sequel. Robert Bates had written a sequel to Psycho, but it was a bad book. It was such a bad book that Universal didn't even want to
Wow.
touch the property.
Wow.
And they went to Anthony Perkins and knew that he was his career was in a slump. And they were like, what would you do with the sequel to Psycho? And he's like, what would I do with the I have no idea. And surprisingly, Psycho 2 and 3 are like not bad B movie horror
Wow.
films.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never
They
saw 2 or 3.
Under the like direction of Anthony Perkins, or creation of
Wow.
Anthony Perkins. Yeah.
Interesting. But I just thought typecast.
Oh, easily typecasted himself.
Yep. And I guess that happens sometimes. And maybe that's why some people don't do something, because they figure they get typecast.
Sure.
So moving on. Boy, we can I'm laughing. We could go off topic here for hours.
Sure.
Hours, the Bond of film. But it's kind of a chronological order to things here, but you went to Montclair State.
Yes,
and
certainly.
and-
Montclair State was a unique experience. Learned a lot about cinematography and lighting, and the blocking of various scenes, and it was very technical. I wish I'd maybe learned more about storytelling and script composition, which wasn't really a prime focus at the university. It was a great time there, but I did realize that those were the two key components that I was lacking. Even though I had been writing and constantly trying to improve on my writing, because there's no such thing as hands down. There's no such thing as you've got it. Improvement can always be made, and I just felt like I wasn't improving in my craft, and I ended up moving to New York Film Academy to kind of focus on some of the story, improving my story skills and improving my business skills within the entertainment realm.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about the business side of it, because these are things I don't even so clueless about. But you did say something really interesting: perfecting your writing constantly.
Sure.
And which I can identify with, because I just finished my second novel. I sent it off to an editor, and then I wrote my first novel 15 years ago. And in between, I've been a journalist of sorts, but it's a constant. And I think the more you do it, I think the better you get, and you begin to kind of come into your own style, I guess.
Yeah.
So how do you? So that's a constant goal of yours, to perfect writing.
Certainly. It doesn't even need to be something as solid as writing just another script. It could be a short. It could be a couple paragraphs describing a certain scene. Sometimes I do writing exercises where you're kind of given an idea and you have to embellish off of that idea, or you have to work with something that you're not familiar with and then try to spin it into something interesting.
Okay.
I like having a roadblock where I have to kind of figure out, how do I get around this and make it interesting for the audience?
Okay. My being a novelist, I in between a bunch of years ago, I read a book about Hemingway, how he wrote, and his mantra was less is more. I didn't necessarily know that mantra back when I wrote my first novel, but the second novel, in the whole process, writing it and then editing it and re-editing it and re-editing it, and always going through my head is less is more on when
Mhm.
you're using the written word.
Sure.
And it's an art. Listen, he was the greatest, period. He was the greatest at less is more. And so I hope my second novel embellishes that. So, uh, for such a young guy, we talked about this too before. You have such interesting career highlights. I mean, you've worked with James Franco, and you've been on set with Rachel Weisz, a great
Rachel
actress.
Bly, Michael Shannon.
Yeah, Michael Shannon.
And that was kind of I was doing background work, kind of stand-in, background extra type of work, and you never really know who you're gonna run into, who you're gonna meet. And it was a bar scene where they required as many people as possible. And yeah, it was maybe 2015. So it's pre-Oscars for both Michael Shannon and Rachel Wise. They're very down to earth people. Michael Shannon's ridiculously tall, and fantastic actors, both of them, without a doubt.
Okay. Um, it's funny. I interviewed for this series, Conversations with Calvin. I interviewed an actor. I haven't meant to tell you about that. I did. He's a young actor out in L.A. He's 6'6", 6'7", and so he was an extra. Uh, I think he played a Wookiee in one of the later Star Wars movie. It's
Oh
on my,
wow,
yeah, it's on my channel.
that's very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. He's a young guy. He's probably a little older than you. So define, explain some of the positions. I don't even understand half these things.
Yeah.
Uh, well, I do. Pitching, scheduling, budgeting. I mean, you've done a whole bunch of stuff for a young guy.
Oh yeah, I'm very obsessive in very niche departments in film. Maybe departments that maybe people don't think of when they, watch a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of going back to the producing and the business side, it's all about development and developing the story, getting a script to where it needs to be. I've done scheduling, where, you're kind of trying to figure out if you have a 90-minute movie, you have, at least 45 to, 65 different, setups and locations. And how do you comprise those all into a multi-week setup where people aren't working 14, 15-hour days, um, budgeting kind of, which is an enormous task. You get a script, but all the visuals haven't been laid out. It's kind of, you're in your head trying to think, how much does this line cost? And every line, every piece of dialogue, you know in those Fast and Furious movies, there's just cars running, driving down the street. But one sentence saying, a car races down a highway could be weeks of work to make that happen. It could cost hundreds to millions of dollars. So almost every line has to be kind of methodically thought through
Wow,
financially.
wow, that's
Yeah.
so interesting. It's so beyond the realm of somebody who goes to Netflix and or Prime and watches a movie. You just
Yeah.
never, you just don't appreciate all that, and that's why I really appreciate talking to you, because you're kind of energizing me. So we're gonna just take a little bit of a breath and go off topic.
Sure.
And I really looking forward to asking you this question. Um, so here's the setup, and you can or cannot answer it. You can answer it with one or two or three, whatever you are so moved. But here's the setup. Yeah, excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Someone who's dead that I'd like to spend a day with.
Good question.
You said living or dead, right?
Yeah.
I mean, part of me wants to say Spielberg only because
Sure.
Lord knows a 50-year career, you can pounce on every question, anything off of him, and he'll have an answer for you. But if I had to say, someone deceased, probably Orson Welles.
Okay. Great answer. No, great answer. I look at the AFI's list of top movies all the time, and I go on, and I'm forever looking at top movies and the movies I've seen and where they fit in. And of course, I'm a big fan of the Godfather and Scorsese,
Sure.
Coppola, and huge fan. I think there's nothing quite like the Godfather. I could talk about it forever. But of course, Orson Welles, comes up, and his movie,
Citizen Kane.
yeah, and I saw it once.
Only once.
Yeah, I saw it only once, and
Mhm.
maybe 15 years ago for the first time, and I don't know, I don't know.
Mhm.
He was a genius, when he did War of the Worlds. That radio broadcast. I mean, that was
Of
great.
course.
So you think well, obviously you do. And do you think Citizen Kane is the best?
Citizen
It's a
Kane. Yeah,
hell of a
I
question.
mean, it was certainly probably the best movie of its time, but 80 years later, I don't think that one movie can still harness that title 80
Right.
years later. It's a fantastic movie. It did a lot for cinema. It did a lot for the industry. And it also, I guess, showed younger people, just like a young Spielberg, like a young George Lucas, that no matter how young you are, you can still pull off greatness and pull off art. But yeah, it's not the greatest movie of all time.
Good. I never thought it was. That's my impression. I would go to Casablanca before that. Godfather. Anyway, we'll touch base on that in a little bit. So this was very provocative, and you had made a statement that watching bad movies is really important. So
no one does. No one's interested in spending 90 minutes to an hour 40 minutes watching something they know outright you're not going to enjoy. But I think it's important because it had to have gone through a studio. It had to have gone through people to say, I'll put the money up for that. It had to go through stars who were said, hey, we're committed to make this thing. So it's a movie. A bad movie is never made with those intentions. But there are certainly things that you can go back and learn and realize, maybe I was going off in the wrong direction. There's lack of character development, pacing, the likability of, various characters, what the film's even trying to say. There's a lot of movies that are out and have nothing to say. There's no general message or something they're trying to accomplish. And that's very much, I think, a lot of bad movies they don't have anything to say at the end of the day. And I outwardly look for bad films in a weird way.
No, I think that is so refreshing. And it's funny, as a journalist, and sometimes I critique, I have to write reviews, CDs,
Sure.
I mean DVDs, music, and books, and film occasionally, when I go to a film festival. But everything created has a place and a purpose, and somebody puts their life and their dreams and their soul into something. Nobody is starting out say, hey, let's make a bad movie.
Absolutely.
So I kind of agree with what you're saying. Well, you're a horror guy. Killer Clowns.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space is a fantastic, fantastic. I wish I have a life-size cotton candy cocoon in my living room, just hanging in my living room, and it scares the living shit out of people whenever they walk into the apartment, because it's like, what is this? And I'm like, it's from Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Don't you know?
Oh,
A great 80s film.
yeah, absolutely. Actually, we have it up. My son has it. My son is kind of likes your kind of genre. Um, I had asked this question, especially for somebody young like yourself coming into this world. But I marvel at this new world that we see streaming.
Sure.
And you know, I've got Hulu and HBO Max and Prime
Same.
and Netflix, and
Those-
I think it offers so much more opportunity, along with the traditional studios, you know, the MGMs and the Warners
Sure.
and everything else. But do you agree that it's a brave new world and of opportunity?
Yeah, I think there's there's pluses and minuses, I think, to both of it. As a landscape for television, I've naturally been drawn to, I kind of discovered HBO when it, right after the Sopranos, regime, kind of when they got into, the long form television. And I can't go back from the hour-long dramas on, streaming and pay TV versus kind of the NBC, not NBC, but kind of the mainstream television. They're incomparable, budget-wise, storytelling-wise. And I think that streaming services have allowed like television to come to a place where it's never been before. And because of streaming, now people are kind of open to binge watching, kind of interested into watching shows that they would never in a million
Mhm.
years turn on normally. But when it comes to movies on streaming, maybe new movies like made for streaming, that's kind of where I diverge, because there's only so much content that you can put in front on like the title page of your streaming service. So a lot of the times there'll be movies that will come out and it'll be right on your front thing on Netflix, but then they'll go away. And so very often there's so much content that you have to really dig now to find the content that you're looking for. And there are a lot of independent filmmakers and directors that feel like their work is going to be broadcasted to a mass audience, but it's going to be hidden because there's so much content
Mhm.
that is coming out. Netflix makes 52 movies a year.
Wow. Wow.
Naturally, no one's going to, you know, 52 movies can't unfortunately get the light of day that maybe one at, a movie theater is going to get, publicity wise. So that makes me nervous. It certainly makes me nervous that, you're getting paid, don't get me wrong, that they have no problem with that, but it makes me nervous about younger people's work, maybe the films from newer filmmakers,
Mhm.
independent works, are thrown up on there, but they're kind of, you have to dig for it. And that is, I guess, the minus of streaming nowadays.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about Matt Black.
Yeah.
That's your baby.
My baby, the screenplay that I came up with kind of the beginning of January of 2020, right before the world kind of
Right.
fell off. I was I was in I was at a bar near my apartment, and I always have to credit this place, this Mexican place, Don Cuco, because without their Mexican cuisine and margaritas, it is arguable that I wouldn't have come up with this idea, and I wouldn't have written on a napkin, and I wouldn't have turned it into a screenplay.
Wow.
So yeah, Don Cuco and Riverside, Burbank.
Wow.
Yeah, it's this horror thriller, very much kind of a Get Out meets Taxi Driver, very much a Taxi Driver for 2022. And yeah, the pandemic hit, and I started. It made me write faster because I had nowhere else to go. So it was helpful in kind of putting words to paper. And um, it's now at the Library of Congress. It's been copyrighted, and so hope to get that out to agents and talent managers and production companies in the near future. Yeah,
That's great. Hey, when you'll come back, I didn't say this, I'll say it now. Hey, come back here anytime. Talk about anything, because we've got so much to talk about the world of film, and
sure.
so I'm inviting you to come back anytime. I don't even need much more, a couple hours notice. Let's just BS and we'll film it
Absolutely.
and put it out there. So
I'm
that's
up
a
for it.
standing invitation. You also brought up something I thought was rather interesting. Uh, it's a great title, movies you probably missed in 2021. So you listed a couple movies. Of course, I had no clue about three out of the four of them, but the fourth one, Shiver Baby, I did see, and I actually kind of liked it, and it was a very emotional. But talk about it's a great category to discuss, the movies you probably missed. Um,
Sure. There's
uh,
so much content, going back to so much content, you can only, catch up on so much. Um, one of the one of my favorite films from last year is a movie called Zola. And it's ironically based on a tweet thread. Like someone wrote this story on Twitter and it was adapted into a
wow,
movie.
wow,
Yeah. And it's about a young woman who used to work at a strip club, and she befriends somebody whom she has no idea is a prostitute. And the prostitute is thought process is, I'm going to bring her into my industry and we could both make a lot more money together. And it's based on a true story, by the way. And what she doesn't realize is they end up driving to Florida, to Tampa, to go work in that industry. And it ends up being gets involved in the drug dealers, and then gangsters become involved.
wow.
And it's all this poor woman who had no interest in being a part of this. And it's her true story of how she was able to get out. And it's hilarious, it's raunchy, it's very well made.
Well, I'll tell you what, uh, we're gonna be snowbound,
Exactly, you got some movies to watch for the week.
and I'm gonna take this list. So it's Psycho Gorman for people.
Psycho Gorman. Imagine like those really bad Power Rangers television shows from like the 90s, 80s. It's kind of like, it's like a B movie slasher film where two children they meet this, I guess, this psychotic serial killer, otherworldly killer called Psycho Gorman. And instead of the killer, taking out the children use him to kind of rule around town. It's a very bizarre B movie. If you like
I'll
Killer
pass.
Clowns from Outer Space,
I'll
you'll
pass.
be yeah.
But I am going to check out Now what is I'm saying it right, Titan?
Titan. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes this
Wow.
past year. It was in contention for the French submission for the Academy Awards this year. It's another really bizarre movie. It's about a woman who has a relationship with a car. She has sex with a car.
For the car.
With a car. She becomes pregnant.
From the
and
car.
with a car, yeah, pregnant by the car. I know. Sounds ridiculous. How the hell did this movie make it to Cannes and then win
And
Best
it was,
Picture? It
wow.
won the entire festival.
Wow.
And it's such a bizarre. It's not a horror film. It's not a thriller. It's not a comedy. It's a bizarre French movie that I can't describe in words, but the performances and the filmmaking talent behind the camera is just very well done.
Wow. I'm very my movie. I'm very meticulous about what I watch. I research and read, and yeah, sometimes I'm swayed by reviewers and sometimes not. But there was a TV show. I won't mention names. It was a long running TV show about an American a family, dynasty type family. It wasn't dynasty, but anyway, I had watched that show for years and was a big fan of one of the main characters. And then the next year they had a whole storyline and went on for a whole year. And then the following September, when it came back, they announced that the previous year was only a character's dream. It was only a character's dream. And I was so insulted.
Yeah.
I was so angry that I said to myself, just me, I'm done with network television forever. And it's been 25 or 30 years, and I haven't watched. The only thing I strayed, and I watched this comedy everybody was talking about called Seinfeld. But that I'm telling you, well, I watch documentaries, I watch news, old movies, new movies.
Sure.
No, so you can tell me about Friends, one of the great in Cheers. I have no idea. I won't watch because
Friends is so overrated. So overrated.
I thought it was very pretend. Whatever. I just never watch it because I have my principles, and so when I watch something and give my time, I want to get something back. So which I'm saying is you've turned me off to Titan, but who knows? We'll give it a shot. We're kind of winding down. A couple more things. You've been to Sundance, right?
Yes, this is my second year. Sundance just ended this past Wednesday, so.
Okay, and you got a chance to see some stuff out there?
A lot of great documentaries this year. One of them is called We Need to Talk About Cosby.
Oh
yeah. Wow. It's a 4-hour documentary.
Wow.
It'll be presented by Showtime, I believe, this weekend. It's going to be played over 4 nights. And it is from W. Kamau Bell, who's an African-American stand-up comedian. And it answers all the questions. It goes from his early life as a stand-up comedian and what he meant to the community, to the African-American community, what he did for civil rights, what he did for just America and that pop culture. Yeah. And pretty much goes through his entire life, why he's important, but also where he fell off and all of the terrible things that he did. And it has a lot of interviews and talking heads in this, documentary. And it's all pretty much everyone kind of, do you separate the art from the artist? And how do you look at this person that you once idolized, who is now,
By the way, what an interesting I mean, his body of work so historic. His
So historic.
when he's, I mean, he's a legend, and then you have the balance, and so what do you do? But that's a hard.
Exactly.
It's a hard. Quoting Bob Dylan, it's a hard rain. Um,
Absolutely.
Off topic.
Sure.
I'm a huge, beyond fan of Ken Burns.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it got me through watching Ken Burns. Got me through the first year of the pandemic because I would sit and I would watch the Vietnam War and him
Sure.
and Lynn Novick, and I would watch it not once but twice and three times. I mean, I would just spend days and binge. I just binged and binged and binged. I got up and I walked around and came back. You know, I don't binge and sit and then I wanted to learn more about Franklin Roosevelt, so I ordered and I bought, and I've watched it now 3 or 4 times. I mean,
Yeah.
the Roosevelt's an intimate history. Well, I wanted to know Roosevelt, but anyway, documentaries. Do I love documentaries?
Absolutely.
Do I love Ken Burns? What the stuff he does, it's like wow.
And without Ken Burns, I mean, in documentaries when you see a still image, but they kind of zoom into the thing, or they pan across an image. He was the first person to ever do that. That was a technique that had never been done in documentary before. And Ken Burns was able to use that and almost innovated any historical type of documentary, because if you're using just pictures or drawings, that's all you have as your visual. And he changed documentary for
Yeah.
better.
Would you ever you can never think ahead that way. I mean, your roads, take you wherever. But I
Sure.
just think, do I love documentary? Anyway, that's me. So I think next to the last thing is your future things that you'd like to do down the road at this point in your life.
um just been looking to do development jobs, work in the industry in a form of developing television or in film and media. Um, and would love to write and produce, direct my own films. Kind of interested in starting kind of the very micro indie route, make some movies under the $100,000 budget, something that's a realistic financial goal to reach, and kind of start that way, build small building blocks until I can get to a point where I can find a little bit larger scale of money
Okay.
to produce bigger work.
Okay.
But genre in thriller, horror, mystery, um, they're the easiest films to make on a small budget, and they are financially lucrative. Yeah,
The Blair, what is it? The Blair Witch Project?
yeah, the
My
most
goodness.
lucrative movie of all time. Yeah,
Yep. I mean, wow. I mean, a couple $1,000 and took in millions.
$250 million in 1999 on a $60,000 budget. Can you imagine the profit margin on that?
Wow. Wow. So it's all about the art and the creativity and the writing.
Story, yeah,
I always say it's in the writing, a few words in the writing, and I marvel personally about the writing, which the last thing I want to talk about writing, Casablanca.
absolutely.
You love it. I love it. Uh, I think it's probably one of the great screenplays ever written, and I was so the chemistry, the commonality. You loved it, and of course I've written my first novel based on my having watched Casablanca, and of course I've seen it now about 150 times.
Sure.
I obsess with Casablanca, the screenwriting, and then Michael Curtiz, the director, and the way he used shadows. In other words, your world, Will, I
Yeah.
never appreciated or really understood until I really dove into Casablanca and explored and read about Michael Curtiz. And then when I watched the movie after reading and learning about him, and I watched the movie and I'm saying, my goodness, it's art. It,
Yeah.
it should be in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the way he used shadows.
Oh, I completely agree. And the Academy Award Museum in Los Angeles, which was recently built after numerous years of delay, have a great section about Casablanca, and they have articles from the film. Definitely something to visit whenever you're
Yeah.
in Los Angeles.
Yep. And the last thing, before we went on air, we talked about, and I was so gratified, but I kind of knew you would know about The Graduate.
Absolutely.
Because I was your age kind of when I saw it first time, and it was kind of an anthem. It's kind of an anthem for my generation. But you knew about it, and you knew about plastics, and I got a kick out of that. And I told a million graduates every year about plastics. Nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about. But the why I enjoy talking to you is because you know all this stuff, and
Sure.
we can share that. So we've kind of, this is just act one, using a stage term.
Sure.
This is act one. Please come back
Love to.
with projects, and when Matt Black, whatever, come back. We can just, by the way, we can go on and on and on and just talk about film. I've seen enough, more older stuff than newer stuff.
Sure.
Although my son and I just talked about Aliens.
Great.
And
Great movie.
and the mood, and we just talked about it the other day. My son, we, I'll tell you a great story, a film story. My son, growing up at 6, 7, 8 years old, was a big fan of Ghostbusters and horror, monster movies and stuff. It's the last thing, but it's a film thing. One of my favorite movies is Wuthering Heights, and that was, by the way, talk about film. 1939 might have been the greatest year in the history of film, because everything that's great came out in 1939, and I think The Wizard of Oz too.
I was literally saying that. I was thinking the one movie I think I do know that was released was Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Gone with the Wind might have been 39.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of others, but 1939, well, what a year for
Cinema.
what a year for cinema, and the stuff that came out. But my son was about 7 or 8, and one morning on AMC, they were showing Wuthering Heights. So I said to him, "Come watch with Daddy." And he's 7 or 8, and he said, and I said, "It's a ghost movie." And I kind of lied, because the very last scene, in Laurence Olivier, Heathcliff, and Kathy Merle Oberon, they're walking on the moors. It's a blizzard, and their ghosts are walking on the moors, and they're ghosts. So anyway, my poor 7 or 8-year-old son, I got to watch that whole gothic, brooding, depressing movie, and every 5 minutes, "Dad, where's the ghost?" I said, "Well, they're coming.
Yeah.
They're coming. They're coming." And at the very end, I said, "There they are, the two ghosts. They're on screen for like 15 seconds." So maybe 6 months ago, my son, we talked about that, and my son said, "Dad, that was one of the worst things you ever did to me." So I had to tell you this because it's a pure movie story. It's a great movie story. And I cannot thank you enough, Will, for this, for your time, your passion. You are a hero of mine, because you're doing the stuff I wish I would have. It's great stuff. So please come back, and stay safe in the snow.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign off. Hang on for 1 minute.
Sure.
Thank you so much.